When is a win a loss and a loss a win? Well, that might be the best way of describing the jury's decision in the massive 6-week trial that unfolded in New York State between New York and the National Rifle Association, featuring the embattled former CEO of the NRA, Mr. Wayne LaPierre, who was found financially liable to the tune of $5.4 million by a New York jury. Balance still left outstanding to be paid back to the NRA, according to the judge and jury, is $4.3. However, and this is key, the New York Attorney General, probably no big friend of the Second Amendment, if I had to hazard a guess, also sought to dissolve the NRA as a result of the proceedings, but was denied by the court. Heads or tails, what do we make out of all of this? That's what we're talking about here today. My name's Tom Grieve. Guys, let's get into it. All right, so we're going to be going through a fact pattern. It's going to be a little bit longer than usual because I don't want to give much short shrift to lots of this stuff. They're going to be breaking through kind of what happened and then the analysis. That's the roadmap ahead. So to start with, Attorney General James, that's the Attorney General from New York, filed a lawsuit against the NRA as well as Wayne LaPierre and other current and former senior officers back in August of 2020. In January of 2021, Judge Joel Cohen ruled in Attorney General James's favor and denied the motions from the NRA to dismiss the case and to change the court's venue. In January of 2021, the NRA filed for bankruptcy in an attempt to avoid accountability, arguably, by trying to reorganize out of New York State and into Texas. In other words, perhaps getting out of the reach of the New York Attorney General. In May of 2021, a federal bankruptcy court in Texas rejected the NRA's bankruptcy petition, stating, quote, that the NRA did not file the bankruptcy petition in good faith, end quote. In September of 2022, Judge Joel Cohen rejected another attempt by the NRA to challenge the Attorney General's claims and affirmed that Attorney General James can seek an independent monitor to ensure the proper administration of the NRA's charitable assets as part of her lawsuit. In short, the NRA no longer is flying solo. They need to have a helicopter parent in the car is, in essence, what was going on here in order to make sure that allegedly they're not discharging or hiding assets, things like that, incorrectly. In December 2023, the New York State Supreme Court Appellate Division, First Department, affirmed that decision, and then in January of 2024, a final effort to delay the trial was rejected by the Appellate Division, First Department. On the eve of the trial, Wayne LaPierre stepped down. We all heard about that probably, as Executive Vice President and CEO of the NRA, a role that he had held for more than 30 years. Also, days before the trial, the Office of the Attorney General reached a $100,000 settlement with the NRA's former Executive Director of Operations and Chief of Staff, Joshua Powell, in which he admitted wrongdoing. The substance of the case from the New York Attorney General's office presented basically alleged this throughout their 6-week trial. They said that invoices of repeated private flights, trips to the Bahamas, taken by Wayne LaPierre with friends and family, that were paid by the NRA, including some invoices which concealed passengers and destinations, were improper use of NRA funds. Keep in mind, NRA, as being this public entity, a nonprofit and so forth, there are some rules about how executives and basically what they're allowed to do with their money. It's not a private business that can fritter things away. There are rules. The New York Attorney General also introduced invoices of helicopter trips to NASCAR races to allegedly avoid being stuck in traffic. As somebody who has been at NASCAR races, that checks out. Expense reports submitted by Wayne LaPierre and paid by the NRA for reimbursement of outdoor mosquito treatment at his own personal home, landscaping for his house, and gifts for friends and family. A no-show post-employment contract between the NRA and a gentleman by the name of Woody Phillips to pay Mr. Phillips $360,000 per year in addition to $3,500 per month office rent. We're going to be connecting this all later. Stay with me. Invoices worth more than $4 million from the NRA's then largest vendor, a company named Ackerman McQueen, for, quote, out-of-pocket, end quote, expenses that had little to no detail as alleged by the Attorney General and were used as a pass-through for other expenses incurred by NRA executives, including high-end travel expenses for Wayne LaPierre, as well as hair and makeup expenses for LaPierre's wife. and testimony from whistleblowers detailing harassment, intimidation, and other forms of retaliation by the NRA for raising concerns about the misuse of funds. Those were the allegations made by the Attorney General. For those of you confused, I am not the Attorney General of New York. That is not Tom Grieve making those allegations. I am only the messenger there. You be the judge. We appreciate you joining and checking out this video. Stick around to the end to always see our popular quote of the day. I look forward to seeing what I anticipate may be some spicy comments on this one. Hopefully you enjoyed the fact that I'm giving you a lot more details because someone needs to go out there and just put out all the details and of course wrap up the analysis. I look forward to seeing all that. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe if you've not already done so to make sure you don't miss any of our future content. Now back to the video. Now, following the jury determination of liability against the NRA, as well as a number of individual defendants, there could be a separate court proceedings before Judge Cohen, sitting this time without a jury, to be held to determine whether to award non-monetary relief. So in other words, the bleeding is not over yet, because this non-monetary relief could include whether an independent compliance monitor, which could report to the court, should be appointed to ensure the proper administration of the NRA's charitable assets. That's code for Big Daddy stepping in to make sure that the NRA is doing everything properly. Whether an independent governance expert should be appointed to advise the court on reforms necessary to the NRA's governance to ensure the proper administration of the NRA's charitable assets. Whether Wayne LaPierre and Woody Phillips should be permanently barred from re-election or appointment as NRA director or officers, as well as from any other New York State not-for-profit corporations. Whether the NRA and John Fraser should be barred from soliciting or collecting funds on behalf of any charitable organization operating in New York. So what did the jury determine? The jury determined that LaPierre cost the NRA $5.4 million and ordered him to repay $4.4 million, recognizing that he has already repaid back about $1 million so far to the NRA. NRA executive Wilson Woody Phillips has to repay $2 million. New York Attorney General Letitia James had accused LaPierre as well as NRA executives of orchestrating a 26-year scheme starting back in 1992, ranging all the way to 2018 to dodge IRS reporting requirements by concealing personal expenses and, quote, wasting significant charitable resources in the process. Now, the AG's office further argued that Mr. LaPierre, who, of course, had led the NRA for more than 3 decades, abused his position to receive millions of dollars, not only by makeup for his wife, mosquito treatments for home, personal landscaping, and so forth, but also, as I mentioned, private vacations to include private air travel, not only to the Bahamas and the Caribbean, but also to Africa, to Botswana, Mozambique, in order to use private jets as well as potentially private yachts. LaPierre billed the NRA more than $11 million for those private jets and spent more than $500,000 on 8 trips to the Bahamas over a 3-year span, according to state lawyers. He also allegedly authorized $135 million in NRA contracts for a vendor whose owners seemed or allegedly showered him with free trips as well to the Bahamas, Greece, Dubai, and India, as well as access to that 108-foot yacht. Yikes. And again, those are allegations. LaPierre later testified that his African hunting excursions, which basically were the nature of the trips for Botswana and Mozambique, were, quote, all business and helped further the mission of the NRA, and that he had repaid the NRA with interest for money that he owed the organization. The Attorney General also alleged that LaPierre conducted a scheme to hire executives with a lack of skills or experience who would basically help him facilitate unlawful spending, claiming that one executive, the chief of staff, Mr. Joshua Powell, had his salary tripled, even though he faced complaints of illegal conduct and inappropriate spending. Now, the NRA has responded to this by saying, in part, quote, to the extent that there were control violations, they were acted upon immediately by the NRA board beginning in summer of 2018, end quote, according to NRA President Charles Cotton, who said that in a statement. NRA officials responded to the recent Friday verdict, claiming it showed proof that the association was, quote, victimized, end quote, by what they described as insiders who abused the members' trust. Right. Quote, a parade of NRA witnesses and independent experts established that the NRA was the victim of actions that were pursued in secrecy and not in the interest of the association by former vendors and fiduciaries, end quote, NRA counsel William Brewer III said in a statement. Now, I don't 100% know if we're talking about Ackerman McQueen. I don't know 100% know if we're talking about LaPierre, Wilson, and Powell, but it seems like that's what we're talking about here. The NRA went on with their statement to read, quote, "In any event, the New York Attorney General's case focused on the past and the NRA lives in the present. It was the NRA that ultimately established the record being pursued by the New York Attorney General," end quote, said the attorney representing the NRA. Quote, "Our client looks forward to phase 2 of these proceedings, emboldened by its record of good governance," end quote. The NRA went further on to say in a separate statement, quote, "A jury verdict in a high-profile New York trial confirms what the National Rifle Association of America contended all along, that it was victimized by certain former vendors and insiders who abused the trust placed in them," end quote. As the NRA's attorney, Sarah Rogers, told jurors at the trial, quote, "If this case is about corruption, it wasn't the corruption by the NRA." So what's the bottom line takeaway to all of this? Number one, we of course see perhaps arguably the appropriate weaponization of government who, let's face it, they were not doing this to be friends to the Second Amendment here. At least I don't think that's what happened at all. They were doing this because they saw an opportunity to try to take a shot at the NRA that has been the traditional frontline institution and remains the traditional frontline institution in a lot of people's heads. More on that in a moment. And they thought that they could take them out. We basically had 3 different parties here. We had the individuals who I think are being singled out by the NRA attorneys as being bad actors, to include the vendor. So we're talking about Wayne LaPierre, Wilson Phillips, and so forth, as well as this Ackerman McQueen. We've got these people have been now separated from the NRA. We've got those people in one corner. And to an extent that they're working with or against each other, same team or different teams, don't care, don't know. We've got the NRA in another corner. We've got New York in the third. New York basically, at the end of the day, may have just taken out whatever corruption and dysfunction was present at the NRA. Maybe. What happens next is going to be up to the NRA. Can they basically get the right people in place doing the right things? Can they update their playbook about how the Second Amendment is being fought today? I'm not saying that lobbying and playing the politics game isn't important. I'm not sure it's as important as far as moving the needle goes as necessarily with what great groups like Gun Owners of America, Firearms Policy Coalition, Second Amendment Foundation, National Association for Gun Rights, and many others have been doing as far as moving the ball upfield by suing government and getting wins in court across the country. Will the NRA actually get involved with this kind of effort? And I'm not saying abandon the politics side to it. Simply, they need to be adding to it if they want to update their strategies. Hopefully the NRA, which is an organization that as a whole I really like, but they have fallen behind the times and I've certainly not been a fan of their governance as of late. This is hopefully going to be a moment for tremendous pause, introspection, regrouping, and moving forward stronger than ever. The Second Amendment is stronger and better with a strong NRA. The question is, will the NRA be willing and able to live up to its billings, its self-styled billings, as the preeminent pro-Second Amendment foundation in America? We will all be better if they can step up and rally and become that. What they choose to do, will they continue to fade into increasing irrelevancy, or will they regroup and start to lead the charge once more? I don't know. I'm not anti-NRA. I'm definitely pro those other organizations that I just mentioned. I've been vocal about that both in this video as well as other videos as well. But I can't help but just note the humor that if the NRA bounces back strong and puts great people in great positions and gets much more aggressive and begins legal attacks and does all those things, the anti-gun push to dissolve the NRA and to try to harm the Second Amendment may have done just the opposite. Whether or not the Second Amendment won or lost remains to be seen, but I can't help but notice that this opportunity is there. We appreciate you sticking around this long. Let's get to our ever popular quote of the day. This one comes from one of my favorites, Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. Quote, "I seek the truth. It is only persistence in self-delusion and ignorance that does harm." Don't know whether or not the Attorney General in New York was more interested in the truth or more interested in doing harm to the NRA. You be the judge of that, but I want to hear what you think about all this. Are we going to be better? Is the NRA going to be better as a result of this? I think the answer to that is a wholehearted yes. Will the Second Amendment be stronger with a stronger NRA, or is it just time to pivot to groups like GOA, National Association for Gun Rights, all these other fantastic organizations, SAF, FPC, and so forth? What would be your ideal setup to all this? Does the NRA deserve to have a voice moving forward, or has decades of potential mismanagement and corruption just relegated them to irrelevancy? You tell me. I look forward to reading the comments in this one. Look forward to joining you in the discussion section, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. If you enjoyed this one, please feel free to check out some of our other great content, and we'll see you in the next one.